I sent him into the future.
All right, so again, I watched this movie a while ago. This is Not Fade Away from 2012. I actually had really high hopes for this. It looked really interesting from the trailer. I love 60s music, that rock scene, and this is about a group of kids in high school trying to put a band together. So the main character, main protagonist is Douglas, played by John Magaro. Well, most of the cast is pretty unknown actors, younger actors. But anyways, Douglas and his friends, they get really caught up into the British invasion scene in the 60s. So with the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, a bunch of those bands, The Who, they see them on TV and start listening to them a lot and really get into that music scene. And they live in New Jersey, but they want to start a band. And so Doug is a drummer, but he doesn't really think he's that good. And he's just kind of palling around with some people. And one of the guys they have a lot of reverence for is a guy at their school. It's a little bit older, named Eugene. He's played by Jack Houston. He's probably one of the more recognizable actors. If you don't know Jack Houston, he's in Boardwalk Empire. He's the guy that has half a face, so pretty obvious character. I can't think of his name off the top of my tongue, top of my head. I would say top of my tongue, off the top of my head, but he's really good in that. He's also made a little appearance in American Hustle this last year. So Jack Houston, he plays Eugene, and he's a really good musician. Everybody likes him at the school. He's a good guitarist, and he's kind of a superstar at the school. So turns out Eugene's gonna start a new band. I think he's just getting old of the people that he's playing with, and he asks Doug to be in his band, to be their drummer. So that's kind of how the band starts, and they put a group together and they start playing, and they start doing really good. Well, okay, I take that back. They're just playing house parties and stuff like that. Eventually, there's their party, and Eugene gets sick before they can play, and he has to leave, and Doug steps in and does the singing instead of Eugene, who usually does. Eugene usually plays the guitars and sings, and Doug steps in and drums and sings. Well, actually just sings and somebody else drums. So yeah, that kind of starts a new path in their band, because Doug's really good, and everybody likes him when he's singing. And that's kind of where the story goes. So this is how they start, and Doug's really into it, the whole scene. He wants to do more, and he's getting out of high school, and he's gonna go to New York. He wants to move to Greenwich Village, or the East Village, and go to that music scene that's really arriving there. And he wants to really get into it and start making records and everything like that. The rest of his band's just kind of floundering around. They don't have the same enthusiasm. There's one character, I believe it was Wells, was one maybe the bass player. I can't remember correctly. But every time they have an opportunity, he just thinks they need to practice more. So that's kind of his whole persona, is he doesn't think they're ever ready. He'll say, okay, maybe in a couple of years, maybe in a couple more months. He's always just maybe in a little longer, maybe a little longer. He doesn't think they're ready. That's his thing. And Eugene eventually gets kind of, well, I used to be this big superstar, and now you're kind of pushing me out of the band. And he doesn't like that, because he thought he was, hot shit in high school. Everybody liked him. But now that they're beyond high school and they realize he wasn't the best singer for the band, he's kind of feels like he's hurt a little bit. So that's happening out there too. It's kind of about the band dynamic. And there's other plot points going on. His dad, Doug's dad, is played by James Gandolfini. His name's Pat. And so there's this whole dynamic with them. It's kind of weird. I guess I forgot to mention, this movie's actually written and directed by David Chase, who is the creator of The Sopranos. So that's why it's kind of no surprise that you'd see James Gandolfini in this. And he, to say the least, James Gandolfini, Pat, really disapproves of what his son is doing. You know, he goes off to college and comes back, he has long hair, he hates that, and he just, as always, just kind of has a bone to pick with him. And they kept saying this weird thing. I don't know if anybody could shed some light on this for me in a comment or something, but I didn't look into it, I didn't research it, but James Gandolfini kept telling his son, he kept saying, "You look like you just got off the boat." And that was like his big insult to him. And like, for the life of me, I couldn't understand what he was trying to get at with that. Like, is that trying to be some sort of derogatory term? I didn't understand what he was going for. Like, he called him a hippie. Like, I get that with the long hair. I don't know if he called him, I think he calls him a fag, so he thinks he's gay because of the way he's dressing. He wears, like, boots, like the Beatle boots with Cuban heels or whatever, and he said it multiple times, and it kind of, like, sets Doug off. He's like, you look like you just got off the boat. Okay, somebody please help me. I didn't understand what that meant. Like, I don't see why it'd be, to me, I think of, like, immigrants getting off a boat, getting to the country, but that wouldn't make sense because they're in the same family, they're Italian. I didn't get it. I don't know if that means something else. I'm going over my head, I guess. And if it was supposed to be a mean, derogatory term, it didn't really seem like it. It must be a term used in the 60s that I just didn't get, or they're just weren't using it with enough context for me to get it. I guess the only other thing I could think of is getting off the boat, like sailors get off the boat from port to port. I don't know, something there maybe. Whatever. Tangent. And there's also a love story, a love interest. So there's a girl named Grace that Doug really likes. At first she's dating somebody else from his high school. Eventually she kind of warms up to him after they've been a band for a while. And so there's that whole thing going on, and eventually her and Doug move to California. He wants to pursue his music really in depth and stuff like that. So that's kind of the plot. Unfortunately, I was hoping it'd be a little bit better. I'm only giving it a 2.75. It's middle of the road. I kind of just had high hopes for it because, I really like that type of rock music, and I like movies that kind of explore that. It doesn't have to directly be, a documentary or biography. I guess a biography is more accurate, like a rock doc, like Ray or The Doors or Walk the Line. It doesn't have to be factual, but I was just hoping to do a lot more with it, and it just really doesn't. Nothing really happens. It's not really about a band that makes it big or even a big hit. It's just about a band that gets together and eventually doesn't work. And it's just kind of boring. It's not like a super boring to watch. It's just kind of uneventful. And I think the worst part of it actually is the fact that they're trying to grasp at all these different ideas in the story, and you can see it, but none of them lead anywhere. There's this storyline with his dad, so it's James Gandolfini and his son, and they try to turn that into something that really doesn't. So at first James Gandolfini's just like a huge asshole to his son, hates everything he does pretty much. His mom's weird, like she just kind of seems like she's out of it. But then they try to get into this like more loving, kind of understanding relationship at one point towards the end, because something that happens to his dad, James Gandolfini, but it's just like too little too late. It just doesn't really turn into anything. That plot point, that whole storyline doesn't work out. It doesn't have any emotion in it, really. Same thing with his girlfriend, Grace. She has an older sister named Joy, and she's like kind of crazy, and like literally, like she might be bipolar or something. And there's kind of some scenes with, her parents and stuff like that, and Grace trying to deal with her older sister being weird. She actually is living in New York. And again, it's kind of there, but it's not fully fleshed out. It's just kind of started, and it doesn't have doesn't have too much emotion in it in the end. And then there's the whole dynamic of this band. And there's the one kid that doesn't. It seems like he just kind of fears being successful or going forward. You know, he's always like, "Let's practice more. Let's practice more." And then the guy, Jack Houston's character Eugene, who was big time hotshot in high school, and now he's not, and he's kind of trying to redeem himself, but it's all just kind of too little, too late. Too many stories maybe being grasped at. None of them get fully fleshed out, and there's no payoff for any of them, which is, I think, the best way to say it. So it was pretty unfortunate. And the music was okay. They play a lot of, obviously, like Stones. I think they played the most Rolling Stones and some Beatles in there, and The Who, and even a couple older blues tracks. But I was hoping to be, even that would be a little bit better. They kind of picked some typical songs. And I was hoping, I guess, maybe some more deeper cuts. Maybe some music I hadn't heard before. That'd be good. Oh, the music was okay. The actual music they play is decent. And I guess that makes sense because, you know, they're not a big band that actually makes it with like a big song or anything. They're a decent high school band that has almost potentially a good song or whatever. So the actual, I'm pretty sure John Magero, the main character Doug, actually does his own singing, and he sounds pretty good actually. So there's that. So yeah, I think some of the movie connections kind of reminded me a little bit like That Thing You Do. So Tom Hanks and all those guys in the band, but they actually make it, you know. So it's more exciting. Has, I think, a lot better acting, a lot better story. So that's a kind of similar movie that's better and it's more fun. It's a little earlier, so it's not in the 60s. It's more like, I guess, yeah, late 50s, maybe real early 60s. So this might be a little bit later. That's a good one. And then also another recent one would be Inside Llewyn Davis. So that is actually a good movie and a good example of how you take a story and a character, again, that doesn't necessarily have to be a big, successful artist, but the story is much, much more interesting, and it even has a smaller cast, really. Inside Llewyn Davis is just one guy, like a folk singer, and the songs are great in that. And his story is just more emotional. You get way more involved in it. You're interested in what happens to him, and the whole ride is a lot better with him, as they might say. So yeah, I guess those two would be better movies to watch if you're interested in a drama centered around bands of that time, 60s. So yeah, unfortunate. Ouch. I really liked the trailer, and I thought it'd be a good movie with some potential, but just kind of fell flat for me, unfortunately. So no sign off. That'll do it for me. So thanks. Bye.